Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Welcome back to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast, where we delve into the stories and strategies of those who have mastered the art of self-investing. I'm your host, Phil Better, the podcast mogul, and today's episode promises to be nothing short of electrifying. Our guest today is a titan in the world of marketing, a guru of personal branding, and an unstoppable force in entrepreneurship. He is the mastermind behind RESRVD Agency, a powerhouse of personal branding agency that turns thought leaders into industry icons and monetizes expertise like no one else can. Through his leadership, RESRVD Agency has propelled countless individuals to the stratosphere of success, generating not just buzz, but bottom line results in the tune of multiple seven figures. His strategies in consulting, personal branding, and multi-channel marketing are the stuff legends are made of, ladies and gentlemen. But when he's not busy shaping the future of branding, you'll find him nestled in the heart of Boise, Idaho, where he enjoys the finer things in life, from sampling rare bourbons to pushing the limits of endurance racing, something I have nothing I want to do with. He's a man who thrives on challenges, but above all, his true passion lies in the company of his loved ones, his partner in business and in life, Emma, and their adorable daughter, Aria. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you a true visionary in the world of digital entrepreneurship and personal branding, Mr. Sky Slack. Sky, thank you so much for being here.
Phil, good to be here, man. That's quite the intro. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I always love the hype man of artists like, Ice Cube and all them. They get the crowd going and then they get to step back and be like, I'm good for the rest of the day. That's how I view my job is to hype you up. Yeah, I hype you up. Sure. Hand off the mic to you and say, Sky, why did you become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, man, dude, it's just always been in me. I've always been someone who's had a project. I started really young. I got into building websites and graphic design when I was a kid. And then I just always took that with me. I always had some skills in my back pocket that I could use to do like side hustles and passion projects. And so while I was not the entrepreneur doing lemonade stands and hustling newspapers and things like that when I was a kid, I was always building something. And so it just naturally became, as I grew older, it's like, well, why don't I just build my own business and start, building things for clients? And so just do that enough times, you end up actually getting somewhere.
Yeah, I love that. So in your entrepreneurial journey, did you ever have what I want to call a 9-to-5 hustle? Because entrepreneurs like you who always do the building, like you, in essence, you had your own lemonade stand when you were building websites, that you were a digital website builder, you were a digital entrepreneur in that side. So since you were one of the rare entrepreneurs who are always entrepreneuring, if you will, did you have a 9-to-5 hustle that just helped pay the bills? How did you? What was that like, handling two jobs, like being your own boss in one and knowing that you can make a direct change on a dime, if you will, and then going over here and you're like, this is not the right thing for our business. Like, I know this is wrong, but having no control. Right. How did you deal with that?
Not very well, actually. Not very well. That's why I left that. So I started my first business on the side when I was going through college. First official business. I had like some clothing companies and some, some t-shirts I would get printed up and things like that over time throughout my high school years. I used to sell design stickers and cut them out by hand on my mom's Cricut machine and then, sell them to my friends who had their own little companies and stuff. But I started running my first serious business going into college, and I studied journalism communication in college because I knew that storytelling was going to be the future. And anything I learned from a marketing degree would be taught by people who had never ran a business, who did it, or if they did, the textbooks were written like 40 years ago. They wouldn't apply to like what's relevant now in terms of digital. So I got out of college. I had my nightclub promotion company on the side, and I was working at a regional bank making $35,000 a year as a frontline marketer. And it was less money than I ever thought I would make with a college degree. I couldn't believe the handcuffness that was in there. And being someone who is a hard charger, hey, let's get in there, let's make a bunch of action, let's make stuff happen kind of guy. It was pretty crazy being in a place where you're being relied on to create the result, right? You're being relied on. For me, they brought me in to be like their young buck social media guy. So they brought me in to create that result, right? But to have the handcuffed and the politics and the not able to outshine other people in the company and having to kind of play ball, it drove me to like a real depression, to be honest with you. And it's actually like led to what I do now, because I had all of these books, I had all of these mentors on, podcasts, and I listened to the Tony Robbins and the Ed Milet's and everyone like that, but I couldn't get out of bed because I hated my life so much. And so I had to ask myself at some point, like, what's the one thing that I haven't done before? And I was like, well, I've never actually hired someone to help me. Like, I've never actually invested in myself in that way. I bought tons of books, but I never paid someone to coach me. And so after that, I mean, it completely changed my life. I was able to leave that job within about 9 months. I launched my first 6-figure agency with my fiance. Since then, we've launched a couple others, and I was able to retire her at the end of 2022. Nice. And so, yeah, so now it's, but it wouldn't have never happened then. And so at that point where, now, like, who I serve is I serve these coaches, I serve these consultants, I serve these experts, because those are the people who made a difference for me, right? And without having that particular mentor who got me out of that funk and got me back on track with my life, back into fitness and doing Spartan races and all these other things, I wouldn't be here today. And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've never actually shared that story of what I was doing in that 9 to 5. But yeah, it was awful. And thankfully, how things worked is that awful situation then turned into now like the beautiful work I get to do.
That's usually how it is. You hit the rock bottom and you have two choices: stay down there and get pummeled by life, or climb out of the hole and figure out what the fuck we're doing. And
100%.
You kind of figured out what the fuck you're doing with your reserve marketing. Like you said, you got to retire your fiance, now wife, which is like, I think everyone's dream. Like, now you're able to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
When you came to that point where you and your fiance, now wife,
still fiance, I hate saying that we're still fiance. Wedding's coming in 2025, by the way.
Okay, so I'm gonna say wife. I'm gonna say wife.
Say wife. It's let's do it. Let's roll out.
Yeah, your wife.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. It's on the books,
for 5
right?
years, so
yeah, I had a daughter,
For sure.
So with your partner, well, say for partner, both in business and life, what was it like when you both were quote unquote retired? Like, you retired the 9 to 5, you put up the boots, like you stopped running that rat race to run the Spartan races of your dreams. What was the feeling like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it was scary, man. So that all went down at the end of 2019. I put in my 2 weeks for my 9 to 5 on New Year's Eve of 2020 or 2019. Jesus. So she, at the time, she was working in pharmaceuticals. She was a sales rep and then a business development rep. Very, very accomplished, amazing professional. And so we were kind of planning, okay, I would start building out this agency to start working with some of these pharmaceutical clients. And she would keep her job and just be stacking up savings for us. Because, being a pharma rep pays a little bit more than $35K a year.
Slightly.
And so slightly, right? And I think at one point she was making a 1/4 with her bonus. She made like 10 times more money than I did on paper, but I still ended up nabbing her. And anyway,
good personal branding. Great personal branding.
Great personal branding. Yeah. No, and we could actually talk a little bit about that, because I have that same kind of philosophy with content. And I think it might be valuable for your audience about how to punch above their own weight, because that's what you have to do to get a catch like that. So what? But what ended up happening is, she put in well advanced notice for her job, because she's a hard to find, hard to replace. She was one of 12 or 13 business development reps, youngest in the country to do it. And so she's like, all right, I'm going to put in a 6-month notice. And I'll put it in at February of 2020, knowing that I'll have until July. Things are going to be pretty hunky dory. And so I'll be able to slowly transition out of this. Well, the second that COVID happened, lockdown was announced, she already had her letter in. They just cut her loose. Said, okay, cool. We don't know what to do right now, so we're just going to let you go. So we had like 4 months where we were planning on just like stacking cash to do that. So we had to figure it out. And luckily, we knew a little bit of what we were doing. we were able to get up to a 6-figure run rate like really quickly, and then just kept growing from there. And it was it was tense, but it's one of those moments where you kind of realize what you're made of, right? You have these hard seasons, and the difficulty in that season can either seem like it's a punishment, right? Or it's like something that's happening to you. But when you realize that what it's actually doing is revealing who you are, and it's growing your character, and it's growing your abilities, and it's stretching what you think is possible for yourself, and giving you that season, right? To be able to relate with other people, or to work with clients in the future, or to have a story to tell, right? Because you don't have a mess, like you barely have a message. Looking back at that time, it was like one of the first times where like, hey, like we had to like make things happen. And had I not gone through that, then I mean, I wouldn't be here today, because those skills and the resourcefulness, and like you said, you kind of hit the bottom and you need to like figure it out and get up, or you stay there. Sometimes the skills that will take you up to the mountain are the skills you have to develop in the valley. And you crawl yourself out of rock bottom, you crawl yourself out of a bad situation where you have no parachute. That's actually what's going to allow you to then, get into the rooms that you want to get into, to hit the income that you want to hit the revenue goals, or the reach goals or impact goals. But we don't like to always think that those skills are manufactured inside of these valleys, inside of this hellacious periods in our life.
That's very true. Very, very true. My God. Already dropping wisdom. And I would like to talk about punching above your weight. So
Yeah.
with landing on paper, probably 100 on 10 here, let's be honest, with the
Yes.
pharmaceutical rep, this amazing one of the youngest people to business development. It's like on paper, she's 100 on 10, a 10,000, if you will, like exponential. How did you use the skills for punching above your weight, landing her, not
Yeah.
necessarily landing? I find that a little odd, but being able to woo her enough for her to think, hey, this guy who's a frontline marketer making 35K a year is a good
yeah.
catch, for
Right.
her, in her eyes.
With a kid
to-
too. Because
yeah,
I had
this
the
is a good.
kiddo before, so she came in and she's amazing stepmom now.
Oh my God, even on top of it.
But
So
yeah, so it was funny because at the time, I kind of knew who she was dating, and there were guys who I like, you might know their names just from like their social media presence or things like that, or she had some pretty high level guys who were chasing after her. But what enabled me to be able to get the catch, right? And to pursue her and to woo her, to win her over, and now to, I'm going to make her my wife, came down to a couple of things, which was number one, I realized the position I was in. The same is true in marketing. It's like, if you're the little guy, you have to realize that you're the little guy, and you can't play the big guy's game. She was used to being taken out to, fancy dinners, right? She had a per diem, and she often took out doctors to dinners, to the best places in town. So, you take her out to a fine dining experience and drop 500 on dinner. Wasn't really impressive to her. And it didn't actually show any kind of intention as well. It was just kind of like, if you have the money, you go do that. And it's a way that you can actually trade dollars for actually putting in thought and attention and intention into that experience. And so I, making 35K a year with the kiddo at home and paying for daycare and everything, like I couldn't drop 500 on dinner. But what I could do is I could use my time to create a really valuable experience. We could go drive up to the mountain where they have the ski resort here in Boise, and I could put up lights inside the back of my Subaru, and we could have a picnic under the stars. We could go out and do a hike up to, there's a overlook over the city here. We can go up to this overlook, and then we could bring a journal and we can write down like what we wanted our future selves to be like. And because she was into self-development and all that stuff too. So I could create a little bingo board of all of these different date ideas we could do. And every week we can go pick one off, like a Jeopardy, business date for 400 kind of a thing, back when we were running our agency together. And because I was putting in that intention, I was showing up like none of the other guys would show up. And even the small thing too of every time that we went out, we were God, we were a wreck back then. But I would always make sure that she had a giant can of Monster and a giant Starbucks venti latte, soy with 6 Splenda made to her preference, sitting inside the cup holder of my car every night for date night, so that she had her things like ready to rock and roll. And it was this level of intention that actually showed, number one, I gave a damn more than just being able to front a big bill. And number two, like I actually wanted to know her and wanted to pursue her and wanted to customize things for her. And so to kind of flip this back into a business context, that same level of intention like carries true when you're doing your marketing, where if you really care about your customer and you care about the small things, like you care about the fonts you use, right? The color palettes that you have, the imagery that you evoke, you start dialing in those small details to actually resonate with the person who you want to work with, then you're going to get a few different things, which is number one, you're going to have a lot better time getting recognized by them. They're going to be handing you authority, handing you expertise, handing you their dollars with far less effort than if you were just another person kind of doing the whole generic game. The second thing that's going to happen is that if you're inside of an industry kind of like we're in, where it's personal development or coaching or, agency and media, where you get on opportunities to get on podcasts like this, people will start assuming that you're a lot farther along in your journey than you actually are. And they will start inviting you onto podcasts. The first time I did one of these, we had just started in the high ticket space and I had 0 clients, but they had no idea because my shit looked so good, right? And it was so dialed in and I was so clear on who I was talking to that level of clarity, people don't usually get that. They don't usually get the brand until they're already doing, at least like 50K a month, 100K a month. So you're able to kind of skip the line there and be able to do opportunities and get inbound that you wouldn't have otherwise. And then the third thing that actually happens from that is that you'll notice that the right kinds of people come your way. Because if you're just kind of copying what other people do in the industry and you like, hey, I'm going to make my stuff black and gold and use Montserrat as a font because that's what everyone does, right? Charcoal and bronze looking thing. And I'm going to call it something, I'm going to call it funnels and funnels or something like that, because that's what everyone does. Then you're going to be talking to a generic audience because there's nothing actually customized to the people you want to work with in that. You're just taking what you think worked for somebody else. You don't know the reasons why it worked for them. And then you're saying, that's also me. That's also my identity. That's also my brand, right? It's the same thing of just like, hey, what's a good dinner date idea? Well, we'll just go out to the most expensive restaurant in town. We'll get the nicest dinner we can. And then that's how I'm going to show her that I'm thinking of her. It's like, you're not thinking about her at all. Otherwise you might realize that she hates going out to dinner, which was actually Emily's thing. She hated going out to dinner. We never did dinner dates because she was always going to them for work. Mm-hmm. And so that to say, you gotta, when you actually do that, then you'll start realizing the right people. The clients are like, how do I get this high quality of client? Why do all these people reflect who I am? And they all have interesting stories and we can all relate on certain things. Well, it's because you're putting that out in the brand instead of something generic so that your lead quality then goes from being the generic kind of, piss poor leads that you usually get to like the actual high quality people that you want to work with. So it's a long story long for both on the personal side and the business side, but like putting in that intention, paying attention to those little details and putting in the effort to say like, this is like how I'm going to pursue either this person or how I'm going to pursue these leads or this market or these clients. It can really make a huge, huge difference. Absolutely monumental difference.
No, I love that. I didn't mind that it was a long story long because it showed both two things, that not only in your personal life are you intentionally, when you go after a personal goal like wooing someone like Emily, who is a let's just say, like we said before, a very high ticket client, if you will.
Very high.
very, very, very high. 7-figure high.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. Hopefully one day can have her on the podcast as well, and can hear her side of the story about how you wooed her or she wooed you. But like how you took it from your personal side, you're just as intent as for your clients. You treat them both 100% the exact same. And I think that is the authenticity that a lot of people are missing branding, just like you led to with how someone may take, hey, this specific font worked for this person, not knowing why, because it wasn't authentic to themselves. I love how you
100%.
you nailed the authenticity there. And again, that's why you're the personal branding expert. And I'm so glad to have you on the yeah, it makes sense.
You're right. Shoe fits.
Shoe must fit. With where you are currently, because Boise is known to have a few levels of greatness in it, and a few doors down from different places. Do you think that gives you a benefit being close to so many entrepreneurs that
That's a
are
great question.
hitting the next level? Because like Silicon Valley, great place to be if you want to start your own SaaS business. You know, New York if you want to hit Walmart, Wall Street. But is Boise the place where agencies are built now, since there's so many great entrepreneurs that are building agencies?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, Boise, in some ways, like ClickFunnels is like 10 minutes that way from me. So, you know, their office is there. And I'm not super plugged in with the whole ClickFunnels crew. I kind of beat to my own drum. But what Boise, Boise has this really unique culture where it's been cool, but small. And it's kind of had this, it's had this like inferiority complex, or like this Napoleon complex for a while, where it's not like LA, but the quality of the creatives here, the quality of the businesses here are at that level. Like you have, you know, people who want to compete on a national scale and do things really, really well. Even though we're a town that most people don't even realize is actually a pretty large town. It's the third largest city in the Northwest behind Seattle and Portland. And, you know, has a metro like closely climbing up to 1 million. What people think is like farms and potatoes and things like that, which is it's totally not. You go outside the city, sure, but like not actually in Boise. So there's always been like a chip on Boise's shoulder to like have really good brand, right? Have really good marketing, have great agencies. I mean, great, like, you know, digital creative and traditional creative agencies in town who I at one time thought I wanted to work for. So there's this emphasis on quality that you have here in Boise that is like really kind of unique. So I would say that, you know, in terms of like the proximity, you know, my community of entrepreneurs, they're not from Boise. You know, the particular people who I roll with, so they're not here in town, and don't have a ton of contacts here in town who like just kind of vibe with me and we like regularly do things with. But just the culture itself of Boise, of having that little bit of a chip on its shoulder, saying, hey, we got to do things, you know, again, we got to punch above our weight because we're a small city and we got to, you know, make a name for ourselves. I think that culture has permeated not just me, but the other entrepreneurs who live here, and has made Boise like a really cool place to start businesses and to run businesses and to, you know, contribute in that way.
I love that. Yeah. And I wasn't alluding to ClickFunnels but I've heard a lot about, you know, Boise, this person's from Boise, this person's from Boise. And it's like, what is so special about Boise? I want to know this. And I'm glad I've gotten you, and you said they got a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
But again, it's because everybody thinks there's nothing but potatoes and farms out there.
Right.
So
yeah, we're here to prove ourselves and do things right. So yeah, no, it's great, man. You should definitely come out here. And plus, I mean, you're just inspired all the time because there's nature. You can ski, you can dirt bike, you can river raft, you can hike. It's all like an hour away, depending on which direction you go. So can't go wrong with that, man.
No, you can't. It's something great. I want to go into investing in oneself because it is crucial for success in entrepreneurship, as we all know. How do you prioritize self-investment, and what practices or habits have you found most beneficial in your journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, for sure. So self-investment is huge, right? It's what started my journey. I had to invest into a coach in order to get myself to the point where I could get out of bed in the morning and go to this job I hate and finally figure out how to leave it. So that to be said, it's always been something that I brought along the way. What I look at for self-investment, quite simply, is I run gap analysis on myself. Being, if you've been in like a high ticket sales, or, you know, you've been in sales, you might understand, you know, the gap, right? Which is, where is the person at? Where do they want to be? And then what is the gap in between that? So, you know, they could be at 50K a month. They want to get to 85K a month. What's in the way is they're not getting enough inbound leads because they don't have a brand built up. So, okay, cool. Like we can, switch around some direct response things. We can build a brand and we can fix that gap. So I'm always aware of like, what's the next skill that I need to get to the next level, right? What's the next thing that I need to do, which could be on the business side, right? Could be, needing more sales coaching, or, needing to figure out a particular strategy with someone who's an expert in that. Or quite simply, could be something on the personal side as well, getting, more self-leadership, getting more clarity, removing old beliefs, whatever it might be. So for me, and like what's been working for me, and I don't know if this works for everybody, but I think about like, if I were to 5x my business by the end of this year, like what would need to happen in order to do that? And what would be all the excuses that I have right now of why I couldn't pull that off? Because we don't have this, we don't have that, we don't have, we're not hitting people on email, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. And then turning all of those excuses and the reasons why it can't happen, and turning those into, okay, this is now the checklist and the to-do list of all the things I need to invest in, I need to figure out, I need to hire mentors, I need to get books on, get courses on, so that we can actually, we might not hit 5x or 10x by the end of the year, but we're definitely going to grow if we get all of those things resolved, if that makes sense.
No, it perfectly does. I like that. I like how you use a skill that you've honed so perfectly over your years to use it for your self-investment. It's a unique way of self-investing in people, and it's a possibility that others who have a problem or who haven't started or have tried those like Tony Robbins rah videos,
For
and
sure.
they don't work. They're like, hey, maybe
Doesn't quite work.
Doesn't quite always work. It gets you pumped, but then it's just like, but
Yeah.
there's gap idea about, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years? Like what's
For
stopping
sure.
me there? I love that. We're not coming up to the end, but we are getting close. So I want, if you could give us one lesson for someone who is looking to start their personal branding, because they have their idea, they want to jump into the entrepreneurial, they want to leave the 9 to 5. What's the first couple steps they should do with the personal branding?
Yeah, great question. So first thing you need to do is you need to choose a person you want to serve. Just point blank and simple. You're going to make 2 really important people decisions in your life. You're going to choose who you want to marry in your personal life, who you're going to start a family with, right? And then you'll also choose who you're going to marry in your work life, which is your clients. And as being a person who built really successful agencies, serving the clients who I wasn't married to, if you get married to the wrong client because the money is good, or because you think the industry is well paying, or anything like that, you're setting yourself up a time bomb before that business explodes, before you're kind of back to ground zero and having to figure out, who will I serve, even if it didn't make me a millionaire by tomorrow. So picking who you want to serve, right? Then learning about their problems. What does that person actually face? Not what you think they face, right? But what do they actually face? What kind of things are actually happening in their lives? What kind of things can you actually solve for them? Can you talk with them? Can you take someone out to dinner? Can you do a Zoom call or a podcast or something to get to know them a little bit more and their story and figure out, what it is about them? And then the third thing is just like going in on content and producing at the beginning as much as you can. Because in the beginning of your brand, you're not going to know your voice. You're not going to know your message. You're not going to know what actually resonates that, between you and these people who you want to serve. So, as you're putting out content, when I was building my brand, I was posting sometimes like 7 to 9 times per day, figuring out what's going to stick, what's going to flow, right? How do I want to say this? How do I want to package this? And some posted really, really well. A lot of them didn't. And that's okay, because people will forget about your bad posts, but the good ones will live rent-free in their minds forever. And so getting that volume and getting those reps in, just like in the gym, you can't just work out, once a week and expect to look like Arnold. If you get in there and you put in those reps every single day, then you'll start building the brand. The last thing that I'll say, and something I wish I would have known earlier and used earlier with our agency clients, is do simple audience building every single day. When I was running like Instagram accounts for clients, what I wish I would have done is either had myself or a VA log on every single day and follow 50 people. And then the next day, follow 50 people, unfollow the people who didn't follow me from the day before, and just do that. On Facebook, send 50 friend requests a day, invite people to your group. Do this on a daily basis, because you're probably starting out with a point where you don't actually have enough of the people you want to work with inside of your audience. If you have just a couple hundred Facebook friends or a couple hundred Instagram followers who are like your buddies from high school, and your wife's friends or whoever, those aren't your clients. So go out and be tactical about it. Search out for people who you could potentially see working with, add them onto your list, add them onto your friends list, follow them, have them follow you back, and be able to go from there. And once you have that foundation built, kind of the last thing is like, when you're ready to go legit, is just to start packaging your message, start packaging your values, what you actually find is like unique to you, and start putting that into your brand. Most people, they need to hire someone to do that, because they don't quite know how to translate their values into fonts and colors. That's where like someone like me comes in. But if it is that something that you can do, and that you can do for yourself, then start going down that road and creating that vibe, creating that aesthetic, creating that energy, right? Brands are energy, that energy that then attracts in like the people who you want to work with, and also repels out the people who maybe you don't.
I love that. That's great advice. Just before I get to the last question, I do have a penultimate question for you. As a fellow enjoyer of bourbon, I want to know, do you find any parallels between the intricate flavors of bourbon and the nuanced strategies you employed in personal branding and marketing?
Great question. A lot of my brand actually is centered around bourbon for this really interesting reason, which is bourbon. Even though I think I've had one day in 2024 where I actually drank bourbon, because it's just, drinking is not something huge on my agenda right now with the goals we're chasing, the performance I need on a daily basis right now. But what's interesting about bourbon is that it is the most handcrafted beverage on the planet, meaning that there are regulations on where it can be grown, how it can be harvested, how it can be stored, how it can be aged, what it needs to come out. There's this entire, you can look up the ABCs of bourbon and you can learn all about that. And because of that, the other thing too is the bourbon that gets inside of the glass is it cannot be altered in any way. What you put inside of a barrel for 4 years has to come out as good bourbon or bad bourbon by the end of that process. And so there's that level of intentionality, that attention to detail, right? That when you're crafting a good batch of bourbon, then there's no having it come out the wrong color or the wrong taste and putting some additives in like you can with whiskeys or flavoring it. So that to be said, the parallels between like bourbon and like what we do is, in a world where a lot of people are like flashy and hypey with building brands, like we really, how we approach things with our clients is like, we really approach things as being that handcrafted, right? Not a bunch of AI stuff, not a bunch of copy paste or hey, let's take what the big guys are doing, but like, how do we actually craft this barrel for you? And so when you're thinking about your own brand as well, of taking that approach of really taking pride in what you create, especially with AI and all these tools that can chop up your podcast or write your emails for you. Like, what if you actually took that moment to create something yourself for other human beings to enjoy? And he actually took pride in that work, and pride in making it unadulterated, pride in making it heirloom quality, pride in doing the work with your own two hands. And the people and the clients who we've worked with who have that approach, they absolutely take off. Because in a world where we're so used to, we just got a magazine on our doorstep, a local Eagle, Idaho magazine that was all written with AI. Every article was AI. And in a world where we're surrounded by AI and obviously copy paste and obviously chat GPT content, being able to have that authentic human voice has like never become more valuable, never become more rare. So if you can cultivate that, you can hone that voice, you can find your message, you can build your brand and have it be human instead of robot, then you have that much more of an advantage inside of this world, because people are just starving for that human connection, and all they're getting is just digital noise.
God Damn, that's some heavy stuff at the end of that, Sky. With that said, we're going to jump into the last question here, Sky. I have your 10-year-old self right beside me. He's bounding around as any 10-year-old goes. I would love to know, what is one piece of advice you would love to hand back to your 10-year-old self if you could?
Yeah. Just because you didn't see, this is a great question, by the way. But instantly know where to take this, which is, just because you don't see anyone around you doing it doesn't mean that you can't. So like one thing about me is I like to fast track things. And one of the things that I wanted to fast track, but I never figured out how to, is I wanted to just test out of high school. Maybe done 1 or 2 years, test out of the rest, figure out how I can get all my credits, and then, move on with my life and start businesses. Or at the time I wanted to be a DJ. It's a whole nother story for another time. And be able to, to start my life. Right. But because I didn't know anyone who did that, who actually Emily, funny enough, did that. Because I didn't know anyone who did that, or who, dropped out and just got their GED and just moved on with their life and got into career or got into hustling. Then, I took the lazy, kind of slow, not really a great student, not wanting to be there approach through high school, when I could have used those years with a lot more intentionality. And so just because you don't see the person who is starting a business when they're young, who is, doing high school in 2 years instead of 4 years, because the people around you expect you to go down a certain life path, doesn't mean that you have to. And this really is your story. So if you want to be that person who, you want to start a business when you're 10 years old, you want to start a Shopify store, you want to start a YouTube channel, you want to, when you get to high school, you want to do it in 2 years instead of 4, so you can use ages 16 to 18 to build your next thing. You don't want to go to college, even though your parents want you to, and you have a good plan otherwise. You have to have a good plan otherwise, by the way. You can't just say, I don't want to go to school, and then, be a bum. Then, you can make that happen, and you can do that. And there's no one who can direct your life like you can. And so if you have those ambitions to do things a different way than the norm or what people might expect of you, and you can still get to a place where you can have some success, you can provide for yourself, you can be able to create cool experiences for yourself and, your family at some point, then absolutely do it. And don't listen to the people around you. Go out, find examples online of people who did it, figure out how to do it, because it's possible for you too.
I love it. Some great advice, Sky. I'm going to jump off stage here. I want you to talk to my audience directly, how they can connect with you, any goodies you want to give away. I know you did Santa Claus during December, and those were some great goodies as well. So Sky, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Phil. All right, guys. So this has been really fun. Thanks for rocking out with us here. So we actually got a free gift for you today. As Phil said, I love freebies. I love bundles. And I was the person who downloaded a ton of freebies and a ton of lead magnets and resources and opt-ins when I was figuring out how to build my business, my brand. And now I want to do the same for you too. So if you go to skykstack.com/invest in yourself, we actually have a bundle put together of 5 of our best branding SOPs that, as you're looking to put in those steps, like we talked about, of putting out content, of figuring out your message, of figuring out your voice and your brand, we actually have 5 PDFs that are directly on those topics that'll help give you a bit of a head start. And you can just go download that. It's skykstack/invest in yourself, skykstack.com/invest-in-yourself.
Excellent. Sky, thank you so much for that. Of course, now here comes the fun part. All links will be in the show notes down below, so you guys can go ahead and get that freebie from Sky as a thank you for listening to the episode. Sky, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you and hearing about those early dates you had with your wife and how it helped you become the marketer you are to personal branding.
Absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Phil.
To my audience, of course, once again, check out the show notes down below to connect with Sky and get those freebies. And as always, remember to invest in yourself.